you're starting. May it please the court, Mr. Prosecutor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. When each of you was sworn as jurors in this case, by your answers to the questions that the judge asked you, you promised everyone here that you would give George Christie the same fair and careful consideration, the same benefit of the presumption of innocence and the rule of reasonable doubt as each one of you would expect if somebody who was near and dear to you found themselves in the position George Christie now finds himself. And by the way that you have watched this case and worked through this with us, I'm confident that each one of you will keep those promises that you made. But I think we all have to recognize it's hard to do this in a criminal case. After all, you must think to yourself, well, Mr. Christie must have done something, otherwise he wouldn't be arrested and be here in the first place. It's kind of like if you're out in the street and you see a person who's arrested. Police run up and arrest somebody. You don't presume him to be innocent. You think, what did he do? Now, of course, in a courtroom, that's not the way it starts out. And in this case, it's probably harder for you than in other kinds of cases. We're faced, or I'm faced as a lawyer, with worrying about the question, can a person who is the president of the Hells Angels receive a fair trial in a federal courtroom?
The first day Christie took the stand, federal and local authorities raided 12 Hells Angels clubhouses in search of drugs and gambling devices. Christie claims the raids were carried out to undermine his chances for a fair trial. Authorities used great force to enter 2 Ventura locations. Police claim they took this approach not to prejudice the case, but because Christie's temporary replacement, Damian Sinker, was considered armed and dangerous.
Said that I was arrested the day before with a machine gun. That's way out of line. I've never had a gun beef. Never.
My charges were 20 years on the conspiracy, life on the murder for hire. The day Barry Tarlow came on the case, they offered me 9 years. Tarlow, in open court, looked at the judge and said, "Your Honor, I find that laughable, but we are willing to negotiate a misdemeanor. Mr. Christie is prepared today to plead to impersonating Smokey the Bear if you're willing to accept it." And the judge just fucking blew up, man. He was so mad. And that was just the atmosphere of the whole trial. The judge got his pen and he's shaking it at us. And he goes, "My courtroom runs like a railroad." And he goes, "I'm not putting up with any more of your shenanigans." And he goes, "Your Honor, I appreciate the fact that your court is run like a railroad." And he goes, "Let's hope Mr. Christie and I don't get caught under your wheels." And just these quibs going back and forth. And I was on the stand. Barry Tarlow said, "Study this guy and break his rhythm." And that's what I did. And I got on the stand and I could see where he was heading with his question. I was up there 6 days, I believe. I could see where he was heading. And I started answering the questions before he asked them. So he would ask me these leading questions. And he got so mad, he told the judge, "Your Honor, Mr. Christie is asking and answering his own questions." He goes, "He must be controlled." And the judge said to Mr. Tarlow, control your client. He goes, I can't control him, Your Honor. And, I looked at the jury, and I really think this was a defining moment for me. I looked at the jury, and I said, look, he was a pimp. He was a drug dealer. He was a liar. I said, now, maybe I broke a moral law, but I said, I sure didn't break no legal laws. I go, did I want him dead? It didn't matter to me. Did I ask for him to be dead? No, I did not. And I think that was the defining and deciding factor in the trial. I was in the chow line going into chow in Terminal Island, and I don't know why, I've always got along with the Mexicans, man. Mexican gangbangers, and I've always been friends with them. Used to run with the Berry Street Boys in Camarillo when I was a kid. And I was in the chow line, and the homeboys from Oxnard were talking to me about this and about that. We're, old times. Hey, do you know this guy? Do you know that guy? And one of the guys says, I'm in here for bank robbery. And he goes, forget exactly how it came down. The subject of his crime partner came up. They didn't catch the crime partner. The crime partner was Mike Mulhern. And I don't know if I brought it up or he brought it up, but I said to him, I go, yeah, Slim ratted me out. And they got really defensive. They go, hey, man, that's a pretty heavy accusation to be throwing out. And I said, well, it's the truth. And they were kind of got standoffish with me. I said, you want to see the paperwork? And they said, you got paperwork? And we went back to my cell, walked across the yard, left, got out of the chow line, walked across, went back to my cell, went over to my legal file, took out the paperwork, handed it to them, and there it was all there in black and white. They go to the phone immediately, the phone on the wall. They go to the phone, and they're speaking Spanish. And all I know, my Spanish was Mulhern and Rata. And he said, everybody cut him loose, Cut him loose, man. He's no good. And I'm calling one of the top guys in the Mexican Mafia a rat, And these guys are all idolize those guys. And I wound up becoming real good friends with that whole little crew from Oxnard. It's a real stand-up, all gangsters, all bank robbers, And easy money, fast money for the heroin fix, But yeah, it was dicey, and Mike and I became very good friends. A lot of people don't know this, but Mike Ison was a world-class chess player. He used to play chess with people all around the world while he was in prison. They'd do one move at a time. And when I was in La Tuna prison in Texas, Sonny had put out that rat jacket on me. And so the Serenos were they were cool with me at first, and then they got kind of standoffish with me. And there was one guy that kind of ran them. And I found out he was in Pelican Bay. And we were walking out in the yard one time. I was just walking on my own, walking around. And I said, hey, I heard you were in the Bay. And he goes, yeah, I was in the Bay. And I said, yeah, I had a friend of mine up there. He used to call me. And he goes, oh, yeah, who's that? And I said, Acha. And his eyes got real big. He goes, Acha. And I go, yeah, he used to hand the phone to Joe so I could talk to Joe. And just the whole atmosphere changed. He was like, I was in the cell next to Joe, is what he told me. And I was tripping out. I go, really? And I go, yeah. It's a shame he died, man. He goes, yeah, I know. And I wanted to cement and solidify that I really knew Mike Ison and I knew him well. And I said, I'm never going to get that chess game with him now. And he just looked at me, and that was, he knew I knew Mike Ison, because not many people knew that. And he asked me, he goes, how'd you know that? And I go, I told you, man, we were good friends. And, that ended my there was no more bad energy. You know, Sonny had spread the word in Texas. He had tried to get the Banditos to run me off the yard, and they wouldn't do it. And, you know, did he go to the Serenios? I don't know. You know, I never found out. But I know the energy changed, and then it changed back to how they were. I was real tight with all those guys. You know, I'm going to tell you how my attire for court, and it's really an interesting story, and it's a bit of an emotional story for me. They put you in a holding cell. I didn't ask for permission, but I advised the judge that I would be coming as a Hell's Angel George Christie to court. And we notified him, and every morning I would get dressed in my Hell's Angel regalia, however you want to describe it. In the cell next to me was a Native American on trial. He had killed 2 guys in Lompoc prison, and he had taped the knives to his hand, and he went, I don't know what had happened, but he had been at Wounded Knee. His name was, I want to say Red Bear. I don't remember, but I had on my Hell's Angel stuff, and the marshals would come and get us, and he came out of his cell. He had his headdress on, and he had leathers on, buckskin, and they would march us. It was awesome. They'd march us up to court. And the day I beat my case, there was no way he was going to get out of jail. He was doing life. And I think it had something to do with our friend and some of that whole, you know who I'm talking about. He gave me a pair of sunglasses, and he said, will you take these out with you? You know, just the Indian spirit. He goes, will you put them on once in a while when you go for a ride? He goes, because I know my spirit will be there with you. And I mean, I had them, you know, on my mantle for years. They disappeared one of the times I went to prison, but I had a pair of sunglasses up there, and I'd wear them once in a while. And yeah, we came as Hell's Angels. When I say we, because Purdue was there, Ventura was there, SFV was there, Oakland members were there. The informant, Tony Tate, even showed up and asked Barry Tarlow how we were going to fight our case, what was our strategy. That's how worried these guys were, you know. And Barry said, you got to be you, man. He goes, I want your mom and your dad coming, your friends, and I want your wife coming, your kids, and that's what we did. But I'll tell you, you know, you asked me earlier about the Mexican Mafia. This trial was based around the Mexican Mafia. Joe Morgan was on the witness list. Mike Eisen was on the witness list. We had all these people on the witness list. And I had learned a new tactic at that trial, something I'd never heard about. I was starting to learn about trials and whatnot. And a lot of the people will know, some of them won't. We start doing in-camera requests with the judge. Are you familiar with in-camera? In-camera request is we were asking for very cavalier things, and only the judge would know and we would know what the answer was. The prosecution didn't get to know, and it didn't get to know, they didn't get to know. It was in camera. How it worked was you would take the information, the judge would review it in camera. If he thought it was admissible, then you could admit it, but they didn't know what it was if the judge didn't allow it. It was secret. And I never saw a lawyer do that before, and Tarlow was just blowing my mind. He'd come up with these things. He was so, he just died recently, and he was so incredibly brilliant that the U.S. Marshals told me, the head U.S. Marshal told me, he goes, that's either the smartest lawyer I've ever encountered or the dumbest. He goes, I don't understand what he's doing. And I said, that may be because he's probably the smartest lawyer you've ever encountered. And you remember the lawyer for the DeLorean case? I don't recall his name right now. He came in, he had all these lawyers coming in and visiting him, watching him work, because he had these damning tapes. And they just kept playing the tapes over and over and over. Yeah, if he was here, I'd kill him myself. I mean, they've got me saying that on the tape. And Barry found a way out of it, you know. And I told the jury, I said, how many times have you got mad at your child and said, if he was here right now, I'd kill him? And I said, that's the point I was with this Tom Chaney, you know. But I was going to say, I came home, I beat the U.S. government. Nobody beats those guys. Beat the U.S. government. I came home, and we're going to circle back now. So I get a message. Call Mike Eisen at Pelican Bay. Pelican Bay's the end of the line for California penal system. So I call Mike Eisen, and Joe Morgan, head of the Mexican Mafia, gets on the phone. Mike Eisen is in one cell. Joe's in the cell next to him, and they pass the phone back and forth. So Joe Morgan gets on the phone and apologizes for Mike Mulhern ratting on me, because that's, you know, the ultimate sin. And it was, you know, people that aren't into this lifestyle, it means nothing to them. You know, talking to Joe Morgan and Mike Eisen and having them apologize to me, you know what, meant a lot to me. And, you know, they didn't have to apologize. These are the Mexican Mafia heads, man, you know. But they apologized, and, you know, I continued my relationship with Mike. Joe Morgan died of cancer. And then Mike did his time from the case in Ventura, got out, and got murdered on the streets of San Francisco. He got knifed to death. And, you know, Mike was so... I wrote a story about Mike in my book, Outlaw, Riding Through the Storm. And I couldn't find any pictures of Mike except a booking picture that was so terrible. I had to get an artist to render a picture of him so that the readers would know what Mike Eisen looked like. Now that's friggin' security, man. To not even have a picture out there floating around of you, that's a goddamn gangster, man. You know, Barry Tarver was brilliant. He got him to admit he'd got $250,000. And then Barry said, now let me ask you this, Mr. Mulhern. Do you have a bonus coming? And, you know, the courtroom kind of, everybody's looking at each other, and he goes, I have a $50,000 bonus coming if he gets found guilty. So Barry goes out to comes out from around the defense table. You have to be very careful not to walk into the pit of the federal judge. You have to walk around. It's like imaginary. He walks over to the jury, and he goes, you heard him. $250,000 and a $50,000 bonus. And he goes, he's going to all the jurors, and he's on the jury box. He's grabbing it, looking at him, and he goes, and who do you think pays for this? The jurors are looking at each other, and he goes, why, you do with your taxes. And they just were like, you know, the judge was so mad. And it turned into such a circus. And I'm going to say this, and there's going to be people that say I'm full of shit. It's not the truth, but it is the truth. The U.S. Marshals were wearing Free George Christie shirts as they escorted me into the courtroom at the end of the trial, and they were admonished by the judge they could no longer wear those. And the killer is, I got found not guilty. I came home. Probably a day later, I got a phone call from the U.S. attorney. He wanted a few shirts, but I sent them to him. Now, that's honest to God truth. But what we did at the end was, I asked Barry, I said, Barry, can we throw a party for the jurors? Is it against the law? And Barry said, why, no, it's not against the law. We threw a party where all the jurors found me not guilty. about half of them showed up. And about half of them showed up, and the LA Times said, Ventura Hells Angels dropped their no bozos policy for one day, allowing jurors to celebrate with Mr. Christie. And Mickey Rourke and I were on the front page of the Los Angeles Times.
We were outraged, and we're sending a message to Washington that this type of activity has to stop.
The jury not only found George Christie innocent, but before leaving the courthouse, they also denounced the tactics of informant Michael Mulhern and that of the FBI. Juror Bill Eney says the U.S. attorney coerced 4 witnesses into testifying against Christie.
There had to be a willingness to show on Christie's part that he was willing to do that, engage in that sort of crime, and we found that there was no such intent.